Welcome to Moonbeaming, a podcast about lunar living, magic, creativity, tarot, and more. I'm your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I'm so honored and excited to be here with you today. Hi, welcome back to Moonbeaming. Thanks so much for being here. Today, we have an episode all about the Six of Cups, the minor arcana card in the tarot, and one of our supporting archetypes of this year, as we are in a 6-year, if we are going by the Gregorian calendar, which most of us are, if we are writing 2022 on our checks and ending our file names with .22. Anyone else? That's how I save my files. Before getting into this week's episode, let me remind you that enrollment is open for Resourcing the Creative Self, which is my upcoming workshop series about creativity, magic, and practice. It's super fun. You're going to make a lot of work, a lot of art, a lot of writing, a lot of sculptures, hopefully some magic as well. You're going to put together a vision board of your creative self. You're going to make space for your art. You're going to give yourself compassion and gently put your inner critic or perfectionist or damaged art school student aside so you can reconnect with your inner spark. That's what we do in the workshop series. We do this through gatherings, lectures, experiential practices, community, guest teachers, and daily practice. We have awesome guest instructors who are artists like Lizzie Silva, friend of the Moonbeaming Pod. She was on the podcast an episode or two ago, as well as Edgar Fabian Frias, also friend of the pod. We all love Edgar so much. They both have amazing episodes that you can listen to. We also have the incredible Lisa Marie Basili, who has written many books and is also a published poet and also an instructor and makes their living writing. That will be the other instructor that will lead us in a creativity workshop, in addition to the creative workshops that I teach as well. So it's a super, super fun time. I really do think more than ever, our creativity, our practices, because it's not just making art that helps us recenter. I think it's our spiritual practices as well, whether that be meditation or sitting at our altar or communing with our ancestors, however that looks like for you. If you're anything like me, you might have picked up some not so great creative hygiene practices in the pandemic. I'm talking about scrolling. I'm talking about consuming more than you create, analysis paralysis, comparison to the max, all the things that shut our creative spark down and create creative ruts. Whenever that happens, the answer is to set up a consistent practice that feels supportive and connective and nourishing and low stakes. I've also been reading and learning so much about the brain this year, and building new neural pathways requires creativity. It requires practice, learning new things, focus, and that can only happen over time, like over weeks, over months. So if you're ready to change your brain, if you want to jumpstart some new passions and really work on regaining an attention span so you can read a book learn a new language, learn new skills, watch a movie all the way through without picking up your phone. Once again, connect to the fact that you are an interesting person with opinions and projects you're working on, and so on and so forth. Well, resourcing the creative self is the series for you. This is also the last time I'm teaching this year. It's the last time I'm teaching a longer workshop series this year. This is just under a month. It's quick, it's fast, it's furious, but it's long enough to really make transformative change. I'm probably going to be teaching a couple of one off workshops this autumn. I'm also probably going to teach this series again because it's so fun. I love it. But this is the last time in 2022 that I will be facilitating a longer class series. So if you've been wanting to go deeper with me in live classes and have me be open for your questions and open to support you in your practice, this is it. This is your chance. My books, my tarot books, are not open to the public anymore. I only see clients, existing clients. The only other time I read for people other than certain guests on this show are people who leave reviews for the show. We announce winners for tarot readings. So that's really it. So taking classes with me is the chance to hang out with me, and I promise it's a good time. For more information, you can click on the show notes, Google's your friend, check out our website. And now on to this week's show. The Six of Cups is such a beautiful archetype and card. It is at once so simple, but also can go so deep. We've talked about the sixes and what they are all about previously, so you can go back and reacquaint yourself with. There's like the Lovers episode, there's the Six of Wands episode. So you can check those out if you haven't checked them out or it's been a while. There are also a workshop on my site all about the Lovers that you can sign up for if you want to explore this archetype. And if you want to get into the sixes more, I suggest you take the Tarot Constellations class that will get you all squared away. The way that I teach tarot is that we can ground each archetype by number, by element, and by careful and considered symbology. That's where we begin. What we do after that is we then layer what's going on in our lives while we are pulling the card. What we layer on top of that is like, what are the other cards around the card that informs the meaning if we're doing a tarot spread. And of course, because tarot is life and life is tarot, we use the card as a portal, as an invitation, as an opportunity to look up and see all the situations or all the mirrors of the card that are happening in our life, or we see the circumstances or situations in our life that require the energy of the card or that would be supported or helped by the energy of that card. And Six of Cups being such an innately healing and innately positive archetype, it's really a kind of balm, 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 like a salve in our lives. And I can't think of much of any situation that would not be enhanced by the energy of this card. In the Golden Dawn school, which is how I learned, I don't take everything that they offer as gospel. No one should ever, please don't, please don't take anything, everything I'm telling you as gospel. But this is how I was taught. And some of the structural ways that I think about the tarot is informed by the Golden Dawn, and it definitely makes sense. And I will stand by some of those teachings, which of course were probably informed by other teachings that we don't really know about. Anywho, moving right along. Water, which is the element of cups, is the second element. The first element is fire. This also determines speed, it determines timing. And time is also a major theme of this card and cups. Generally, fire can be this fast acting element. So whenever we see wands, we know that there's the possibility that the events or the changes around the archetypes can happen pretty quickly. With water, they also happen relatively quickly with relative ease, unless it's, say, the 4 or the 5. It can be harder there to get things going. Sometimes those cards are snapshots of stuckness or stagnancy, but in general, water has a flow to it, right? In general, water connotes a kind of change inherently. Water is also connective. Water is porous. Water bonds. It is what we need to live and to grow. Plants need it. You need it. I need it. Living things need water in order to thrive, and water is inside of us. We are between 50 and 70% water, depending on our age and how hydrated we are. That's also why we are so connected to the moon, because the moon is connected to the tides and all of the water on the planet, including inside of us and animals and plants. In these ways, water is about what we need inside and outside in order to grow, in order to locate ourselves and one another. Water's about safety, memory, emotion, where we've been, ancestry, what we want, what we need in these grander ways that are sometimes kind of vague, right? Like when you say, oh, I need love. Well, what does that mean? It can be kind of vague. We have to get a little more specific, which of course swords can help us with, and even pentacles can help us with. This is why we need the other elements to give our life form and depth and detail. Water, of course, the cups suit, is also about spirituality, intuition, desire, art, harmony, the beautiful things in life, healing, healing from trauma, healing ancestral things, love, relationships, and relating. Water is also a shapeshifter. It's a cloud, a river, it's a sauna, sheets of ice. Water is clear, but also in the depths of water, such as the ocean floor, it's opaque. You can't see down to the bottom of a 2,000-foot ocean. Water, of course, takes the shape of the vessel it is in, the container it is in, and this is how it relates to cups. Cups are vessels. Cups are about what is being held, what is being supported, nurtured, protected. What kind of container are things in? What is the quality of the container? Are there other containers involved? What is our capacity to hold? Are things being held with care, with intention? When we see a cups card, we also think about what we are holding on to and why, and how that is influencing our moods, our emotions, our psychic inputs, our psychic interpretations, our intuition. If we are in flow, if we know how to let go, are our containers too small? Do they need to be repaired? Do we have to widen out? These are all concerns of the cups. We know that sixes are about integration, they're about widening, expanding, about turning the corner in some way, whatever that looks like, finding some kind of equilibrium, maybe not even necessarily balance, but equilibrium. The sixes are about coming to some kind of conclusion that allows us to make a change that is overdue, that is felt, that can often feel like, oh, that's the missing link. This is what I needed in order to move on, in order to get out, in order to begin again, or find that energy, that courage, or that motivation to keep going. It could be about making peace or acceptance about a situation. Making peace or acceptance about a situation, of course, doesn't mean you like it, right? Or often realizing you won't be able to make peace or find acceptance about a situation, like there won't be a conclusion or a wrapped up bow. So then what? So then what do you do? How do we find acceptance within? How do we stay open and hopeful enough to keep going? How do we take what's ours or keep what's ours or call back our energy and our power and maintain some kind of focus or clarity or motivation after a series of setbacks? How do we see ourselves and one another in a different light, with wider consciousness, with wider compassion? And what do we do? These are all questions that the sixes tend to ask. And so the sixes are pretty humbling. It's humbling to see our missteps or to see ourselves through the lens of another and to realize, oh, right, I made a mistake. I'm not perfect. I'm not my best all the time. What even is my best self? In these ways, the sixes and the minors are like this mini beginning, like a mini little ace again, as the fives, of course, denote some kind of crisis point. The sixes are what happens after we've processed. I think of that Whitney Houston song, It's Not Right, but It's Okay. We don't have to forgive everyone. We don't need things to be like in a tidy bow or this perfectly, beautifully written essay in order for us to learn from our lessons and begin again. And I think often the sixes are about that process of writing the song or writing the poetry to try to describe what's happening, or writing or sharing a different story about what has happened in order to move on. When we're in a sixth time, we're choosing to do things differently. We've seen a lot. We're not innocent. We need to take accountability as needed, and we want to do things in a different way. We are choosing to be kind, even though the world is cruel. Or we're choosing to keep going on a project or a dream, even though we had a major setback, or we've been told it's silly or to abandon it. Like, say, you had a really, really bad breakup in the five and you were lied to and you were treated really poorly. The 6 could be choosing love again, you know? The 6 could be, I think I talk about this later on in the episode. It was one of my bullet points. The 6 could be downloading a dating app again or telling your friend, hey, like, I'm ready to date again. That's what that could be. I also want to remind you that in the Pamela and Coleman Smith rendition of all the 6s, there are always groups of people in it. And so the 6s, I think, are ultimately about ourselves and others. They're ruled by the lovers, for goodness sake, you know? This is one of the numbers where we're really thinking about ourselves in community or in relationship with others. I really do not think that tarot is just about ourselves because we heal in community. I am created by other people. I am created by experiences I've had with other people. So are you. We heal in community. We heal through relating to one another and relating to the earth and the planet. Obviously, it could also be about our relationship to nature, our relationship to our garden, our relationship to our pets, our relationship to our children, our relationship to our ancestors, our ancestral line, whatever that is. I do think in general, the Pentacles and Cups are about the group more than the others, but all of them, like all of the cards can highlight our relationships, how we are showing up for others, how they are showing up for us, or the lack of, you know. They can also highlight loss or loneliness. Of course, they can also highlight how past relationships are influencing our present behavior, which is one of the things that the Six of Cups highlights, of course. In the symbology of the Pamela Coleman Smith rendition, the cups are being utilized like vases. They're flower holders, they're offerings, they're gifts, which is what we become and what our relationships become when we've reached a state of emotional maturity, when we choose altruism and generosity and care, when we're living in alignment with our heart, when we have the ability to show up for one another in compassionate ways, when our nervous systems are healed, when we're responsive, not reactive. This is what this card highlights. Sixes are very much about giving and receiving and relational dynamics. And Six of Cups often shows up because we're being asked to step into a different role with regards to relational dynamics, relationship, our needs, our dreams. An example of this is deciding to stop people pleasing. That's absolutely something this card could illustrate. Or it could illustrate you being in a relationship with someone who's putting up boundaries with you, and you're having to grapple with that and still hold them with love and still choose intimacy with them, even though maybe their boundaries feel like a rejection, right? This is like classic Six of Cups situations. Let's start with some more basic meanings of this card, and then we will zoom out, we'll widen, we'll expand. So I'm pretty sure you can guess all the keywords here for this card. Memories, nostalgia, making peace with the past, emotional maturity, emotional healing, dreams, emotional security, safety, innocence, harmony, self connection all come up here. Being seen and accepted and received by yourself or others, understanding what your needs are, and maybe even getting them met, or at the very least, feeling safe and secure enough to ask for them to be met or share what those needs are, or at the very least, feeling safe and worthy enough in yourself to be able to locate those needs, that inner self's needs, maybe even your inner child or inner teenager's needs, what you require for love, for care. In my opinion, a major aspect of this card is being able to communicate needs of yours that are unique, that don't look like everyone else's. Like if you have autism or ADHD or you're highly sensitive, it's being able to say, when I was growing up, I was told that these specific needs were too much, or that I'd never find other people to meet those needs, or situations where my access needs would be respected. And now I'm being brave enough to be vulnerable enough to voice them, to show up for them, and to communicate them first with myself, then as others, like really understanding that on a core fundamental level, which of course is deeply healing because you're witnessing and honoring yourself. I think that's a major, major aspect of this card. This is also an archetype of relationships that are not transactional, that are not conditional, that are unconditional, and that are simply connected by care, fondness, love, clear seeing, clear regard. It's about what we do with the fruits of our hearts blooming, with the kindness of ourselves, and how that flourishes and what that flourishing does for us, our spirituality, our connection to the planet, our connection to source. And I also think it's about that cultivation, heart cultivation, spiritual cultivation, boundary cultivation, artistic cultivation. It begins right with our heart. In my Better Boundaries class, I got the download to do meditations on heart cultivation and heart boundaries by focusing on the pericardium, which is the container of the heart. And that's such a great metaphor for the Six of Cups, creating a safe, protective device around those precious, tender parts and bits is part of an emotional healing process, an emotional expansion, because we can't really safely function in conditional love, and we can't safely function in conditional compassion. It has to emanate from within as much as possible for ourselves, for our loved ones, for the planet. Life isn't a tit for tat. Part of that is making peace with the fact that certain people and certain circumstances will not change. So, what do? There's that truism I think about sometimes, that having hate in your heart, wanting revenge, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. And that's true to a certain extent. And also, I'm here for rage, I'm here for anger, and also, how do we protect ourselves? How do we keep ourselves safe, even when we must deal with those who are not as compassionate or careful as we, those who do not see what we see, those who have different values than us, which is a really difficult quandary that if you are listening to this, I know that you're in that position all the time. I know that an issue that probably comes up frequently for you is that you are a care bear. You care about other people. Care is a major value to you. And spoiler, newsflash, other people don't care as much as you do often. Other people aren't out here thinking about everyone else before they make a move or say something. Maybe you were raised around people like that. So you now feel like your caring is something to be ashamed of, or it's a source of you feeling like a kind of outcast. And part of the Six of Cups message is that through finding yourself and being proud of yourself and your gifts, even though they aren't always valued by the larger culture, or maybe even those immediately around you, these are your gifts. And this card could be coming up for you because you want to find the people who will appreciate and see and accept and receive your gifts. How do you do that? A physical example of the Six of Cups that came into my mind when thinking about this card is kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing pottery with gold in the cracks. I also think, of course, there's that Leonard Cohen song, The Cracks Are How the Light Gets In. The 6 comes after the 5, and the 5 is about upheaval, depression, disappointment, heartbreak, shadows, emotional flooding, being washed away. And the 6 is about repair, about how we go on, how we access restoration or spirituality after a period of spiritual or emotional loss or devastation. It's about having the strength to heal, the power to heal, and the vulnerability that is required, and the hope that is required for healing. And in order to heal, we have to define what healing looks like and feels like for us, because it's vastly different. It's one of the reasons why I have an issue with the overuse and vagueness of the word healing, because healing is loaded, it's political. Even the idea of healing is influenced by society. And in order to be healed, it often means we can function in society. So we can work, so we can be productive, so we can buy certain things, so we can be utilized and used in certain ways. And the irony of healing is that once you have healed more, it can be difficult to function in society because society is sick. And of course, I'm being jaded here. I did need to bring that up, though, because I know some people will relate to this. But let's take a less jaded perspective and pull in another aspect of this card and healing, which is that one of the beautiful outcomes of healing is being able to give more, to show up with more presence and patience for yourself, but ultimately other people. This is a major witch adage. It's part of my Jewish upbringing and philosophy, which is that when you are helped to a certain point, when you find things that help you, when you have healed to a certain extent, when you are resourced to a certain extent, you then help others. You then help other people with your resources, whatever that looks like, whether it's emotionally, mentally, physically, with your time, with money, you help get others resourced. This is definitely a call of the spiritual path, which can be sort of jarring or different than the green juice, like a la smoothie wellness world, which can often be individualistic and aspirational and about being optimized to be able to work more or show up in a particular way. And what I'm talking about is something different. It's about being of service, helping those who need it from a resourced way, not from a martyred way, not from a should kind of way, not as a way to get love, right? But a way that is from the heart and is of the heart. And of course, I'm also extending this idea of service, which is that service can be anything. If you're an artist and your path is to make art, that's what you do. You do it in an embodied, resourced way. Or maybe you're a chef or an intellectual, a DJ, whatever it is, there's no hierarchy here. You do it in a way that your cup is filled. And then you see how you can utilize yourself to be of service in simple and small and larger ways. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. You do what you can where you are anyway. There's no act of sweetness or kindness that is too small. That's another message of this card, which is giving up perfectionism, especially in spiritual or service led ways. Ask yourself, like, where is your perfectionism creeping in and ruining or tarnishing your ability to be of service, your ability to give, and also your ability to receive? Because we'll say we're not a mind reader, but then we won't share what we need. We won't give someone an opportunity to show up for us, or if the way someone shows up for us or gives to us isn't exactly what we wanted, we won't receive it, or we'll cut ourselves off from beautiful, good, sweet love. Or we'll have a beautiful spiritual practice, one where we're sitting and observing and meditating. And because we're thinking thoughts, because our meditation is all over the place, we find ourselves judging ourselves like, well, this isn't good enough, or this is a waste of time, or I'll never be good enough. And then the self-doubt creeps in and we think we're not doing enough and we aren't good enough to continue with a spiritual path, or we're not good enough to take someone up on that invite, or we're not good enough to dream or to wish. And that's when we need the sweetness and message of the Six of Cups. My partner shared something really profound also about healing that the Six of Cups illustrates. He was sharing that when he noticed he was caring about something, he noticed that that was a state of healing. Because when you grow up in chaos, or when you grow up around people who tell you that you can't care about something because it'll go away or it'll be taken from you, when you start caring about something, whether that be your garden or learning a new skill or taking time out to cook food. That was the example that we were talking about. You let yourself feel safe enough to attach or to hope that there will be more of the thing. And that is a major key to abundance as well. And I thought that was really, really profound. So if the Six of Cups is coming in for you and this resonates, maybe this is about feeling safe enough to care about something, to care for something. Take a breath, receive yourself as you are, because I don't know about you, but shame never motivated me to do better in a way that felt better. Punishment or threat never helped me want to do or give freely in a way that felt expanded. But it sure did get me to do things that continued to contribute to self-flagellation and self-constriction. And the Six of Cups asks, how do we embody compassion and sweetness with ourselves so that we are coming from a place of abundance, not scarcity? It's that lovers both and thinking. Maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you didn't show up as your best self. And now you know better and you're going to try something different. It's about learning from your mistakes, making amends when necessary, even with yourself, right? Forgiving yourself and picking yourself up again. And if this is all resonating with you, that's because we're in a 6th year. And if you are trying to crawl out of a depression or reconnect to yourself in some less perfection-seeking version of yourself, or if you're trying to connect to some of your core dreams and wishes from when you were a child, if you're caretaking and trying to figure out where you end and begin and what those boundaries are, if you're trying to rebuild a meaningful life after a period of maybe being far away from that meeting or forgetting what that meaning is because you've simply needed to survive, because you've simply needed to put one foot in front of the other, then welcome. Welcome, because here we are in the Six of Cups, and these are some of the themes. There's this reminder to feel our way in as much as think, because we know we've got thoughts. These create feelings. Those feelings create actions. We also know that actions can create feelings that can then create thoughts, and so on and so forth. And this is often the pattern that change hinges on. So thinking about feeling about yourself in a different way, I know it sounds meta, that could be really useful when you receive this card, or setting the tone and the scene and the vibe, even when life is challenging or unpleasant, even when there's a ton of things happening that you don't accept or you don't love, even when there are things you have to do that you don't want to do. How do you make that sweeter? How do you keep your energy aligned, heart-centered? Do you say a little prayer ahead of time? Do you light a candle? Do you make friend dates? Do you make nature dates? These are all little suggestions that are actually big suggestions that can come up with the flexibility and the flow of this archetype. This is really big tend your garden's energy. Tend what makes you come alive, what makes you feel emotionally, spiritually, intuitively resourced, which is also how healing works. It's by investing in fun and play and respite, which we all need. We need simplicity and play and simple connections. So if this card comes up and you haven't had a full day off in months, or let yourself linger in a park or by a river, if you can, do so. That is a straightforward message from the Six of Cups. It also describes these pockets and moments of emotional healing. So this card could be suggesting that you are healing, even if you don't necessarily feel that you're healing. And one way to do that, even if you don't feel like you are, one way is to look back at how far you've come, you know? Another is when you are received in ways that you would like. I think of it as when you're on the playground, when you're a kid, and you gesture over to the other kid like, hey, look at that bird. Isn't this bird so cool? Or look at this drawing I made. Do you think it's good? And then the other person says, yes, that bird is so cool. Oh my God, wow, I love that drawing. You know, that kind of energy. That's such a great feeling, right? To share yourself and what you love from this really sweet, innocent place, and to have someone else encourage that and shine it back at you. As we get older, that might become books or having our art received. Maybe it's in relationship with a partner who can go deep with us, who can be emotionally available to us, who wants to know more, who is safe for us to trust our hearts with. We are these sacred, fragile beings, and finding others to share our vulnerabilities with, our strengths with, is one of the gifts of our life. And this card showing up for you could mean you're ready for that, or maybe you're not getting met in some way. Do you have to go deeper with your art or what you're sharing with people? Do you need to get more honest or less superficial? Does the work you're doing, whether it be spiritually or artistically, are you ready for another level of investment? Maybe it's time to try memoir instead of nonfiction, or maybe it's time to share in a meaningful way that might show more of the inner parts of you. And you have to go at your own pace, of course, but maybe it's time to take another step forward in that way. There's also this time piece with all of this. True intimacy and true trust, they take time. They're earned. It needs the harder times and the awesome times to build. How do we repair after rupture? Are we being available for repair, for forgiveness? If we're not, or we're feeling a little sticky with that, meditating with this card can be helpful and can give us the push that we need. This can also look like emotional risk. Reaching out to someone and saying, hey, I'm sorry, I messed up. Do you forgive me? Can you forgive me? Or just reaching out to someone and saying, hey, want to go on a walk? Want to try to be friends, right? It's very vulnerable. I think it's very vulnerable for adults. Maybe, like I said before, this is where it's coming up. I'm back at this bullet point, y'all. It looks like, downloading an online dating app in earnest. Looks like telling someone what you want. I recently ran into an acquaintance and we were chatting and she was saying she was ready to date again. And we were talking about how before she kind of let other people lead. But maybe this time it's time for her to tell them off the bat what she doesn't like, saying, hey, actually, I don't like horror movies. Can we see a documentary instead? Putting yourself out there in smaller, big ways is very Six of Cups energy. Childhood is as well. Thinking about what you were like, what your interests were, and how you might want to put some of those qualities at the forefront now definitely often comes along with this card. Who were you without the trauma? Who would you be without your trauma? Who would you be if some of your personality wasn't needing to be protected or wasn't a series of coping mechanisms? If you weren't hiding your true self and showcasing who you think you need to be in order to be loved and accepted. If you didn't have to be the strong one, the capable one, the chill one, the together one, the professional one all the time, who would you be? If you being loved and appreciated was not reliant only on what you could do for other people, what would you do? This card is an invitation to meditate and reflect on some of these questions and maybe become something more authentic, someone more authentic. See, now we got really deep. And that's how tarot works. And that's why I love the tarot. I could say, oh, it's the Six of Cups. Buy yourself flowers. Be kind to you. And that would totally be true. And I could also say, oh, okay, the Six of Cups. You've got that. All right. Heal your trauma and develop a heart-based authenticity and intimacy with yourself more frequently. Think about healing ancestral trauma. And that would also be true. That's what this week's meta moment about the tarot is. The Six of Cups can also be about how deep or not you want to go or are ready for. We don't want to be right there in therapy land all the time. It's not appropriate anyway, and that's not the full spectrum of life. So if you've been in therapy land by way of really focusing on your healing, the Six of Cups could also be a reminder to just have some fun, to watch stand-up comedy, to make paintings of animals, to rest, right? To be silly. It can be a balancing nudge. It's a reminder to read the room of yourself and read the room with other people. Maybe other people don't feel comfortable going super deep. You might want to check in or think about that before going there. Consent is part of being a compassionate person. There's this really magical aspect of this card, which is this reminder that you can program yourself. You can program your emotions. Remember, when you fall in love with someone, you're the one generating those emotions. We forget this sometimes. And emotional mastery, emotional expertise is a part of the cups and this card. You know you have up-leveled in some way, when the emotions no longer have control, and also when you know how to get into certain emotions, when you know how you can get into flow, into the experience of self-love. Once we have a easier experience of self-love, self-acceptance, then we can imagine and practice receiving the divine. And then we can imagine and practice that we are the divine experiencing itself, because we are. We are all aspects of the divine, of nature, of God, goddess, source, spirit. So experiencing yourself and giving yourself the right containers in which to experience divinity and your divinity, because that's part of why you are here on this earth, is a spiritual message of the Six of Cups, to have this full cup, to be able to give from that full cup to others, and to receive yourself completely. Aren't we lucky? Isn't this life a totally weird blessing and a gift? Those moments when you witness birds flying overhead and you get a little teary-eyed because they're so beautiful. That's Six of Cups. The moment when a friend reads you a poem and your heart swells and it blows you open that much more, while also connecting more to your friend. That's Six of Cups. These small and large miracles, the moments when we can't drink life in fast enough. I was recently at a funeral and it felt very Six of Cups because I could feel my heart breaking, but I was surrounded by people that I loved, and it felt like an unspeakable honor to get to witness everyone in that moment. Or another experience I've had is when I've had to put my pet down, and the grief is so intense and so acute that you're reminded it's so intense and so acute because you have experienced so much love for that person, for that loved one, that it's an honor to caretake in that way. That's also very Six of Cups, reminding us how the true receiving is in the true giving, reminding us that in our temporary life, it isn't how much you keep or have that matters, but how much you can give away. The Six of Cups is also about being at a level of emotional maturity, like I've spoken about before. In the Pamela Coleman Smith tarot card, we see a larger, childlike looking figure giving a smaller, older looking figure flowers. To me, this has always been an illustration of a moment when you realize that a particular intimate dynamic has changed. The easiest metaphor of this is when you begin caretaking for a parent, someone who has been a caretaker for you for your whole life or since you were quite young, and then you become the caretaker in some way. Or remember when you realize your parents are human beings? Remember that? That's very Six of Cups. Or when you see your favorite teacher like at the Trader Joe's or something and they drop their bag and they just like look very human. I think that's also a Six of Cups example as well. I think many of us have had the experience where we might have healed somewhere or matured in some way to a point past those who were in authority or who were in an elder position or caretaking position in our lives have done. When you want to work on a familial dynamic, for example, but your parents maybe lack the emotional intelligence to do so. They can't meet you there. They can't step outside of the dynamic. That is a very Six of Cups moment that has to do with memories and formative experiences. Maybe a parent sees you in this one way that began when you were very young, and it was part of the larger family constellation that they needed you to fulfill a certain role, and you realize you actually aren't that role. That's very Six of Cups. You're asking to be seen, to grow, to have certain needs met. I think about a Six of Cups experience from my own life this year when I approached a friend about changing a dynamic in our friendship. I always felt as though I was really available, and whenever she needed something, I was there. I'd always pick up the phone, no problem. But when I needed support, it felt like it wasn't reciprocated in the same way. And she couldn't do so. She refused to honor my requests around that, along with some other requests I had, some boundary stuff. And so our friendship ended. That's Six of Cups too. And the other part of it that was shades of Six of Cups is that for a long time, there was a nostalgia there that kept me from really seeing what was going on with this person and this relationship. We had been friends for a very long time, and I had this idea of this person and this idea of this person based on what they were telling me and what they projected and what I wanted to believe. And that kept me from approaching them about this need. It kept me from doing so for years. Has something like that ever happened to you? Perhaps. Potential, it's not reality. Fantasy is awesome. Fantasy shows us what we want, but it isn't reality. At a certain point, we have to wake up and smell the roses, step into the present moment, maybe try to make our life closer to the fantasy than it was, but be in the present. At a certain point, we have to see if past emotional responses are getting in the way of finding greater emotional connection and depth. Attention is not love. A hijacked nervous system is not love. Intense push-pull dynamics actually aren't a healthy relationship, even if they feel familiar, because that's what happened in your family of origin or in your first few teenage or early adult romances. If the Six of Cups is coming up and you're thinking about a particular relationship in your life, check yourself around these kinds of themes. Or if it's not a relationship with a person, but it's around a project, a new life path, a move, see where past fears, past emotions might be influencing your decision making. Just because something hurt you once doesn't mean it would hurt you again or will hurt you again. And if it does, you know how to survive. A shadow of the Six of Cups is a certain nostalgia that keeps types of unhealthy shadows or projections going. A friend of mine and myself, we were talking about all of these myths of America and how there's this trope of being, I'm putting this in quotes, like a nice guy, which is about appearances. It's about people putting on a suit, having some kind of civility, and people mistaking that like nice authority kind of masculinity for goodness or trustworthiness, like a lawyer or bank teller or something like that. We've all been influenced to believe that a nice guy looks a certain way, but in reality, in our country, a lot of the construct of masculinity for what, the bar looks like for what men can do, it's really low. And there are these double standards around other genders. The bar is a lot more higher. Like women tend to judge other women much more harshly than they do men. Sometimes, not always. That's an example of that. Or making it more personal, a shadow of the Six of Cups would be an experience of you and your sibling not having the same memories of growing up, or you and an ex coworker, or something like that, or manipulation, gaslighting, those sorts of themes can come up here as a shadow of the Six of Cups, and we want to be careful about that. The need to appear a certain way or to uphold appearances rooted in a fake nostalgia can be a shadow of the Six of Cups. I wanted to end this episode with another example from my own life. I'm feeling very Six of Cups. Here I am, being very vulnerable, sharing all of these personal moments from my own life. But we're here. I wanted to embody the Six of Cups and show up. I've been thinking about how I show up relationally, as we all are in this lover's year, how I show up with friendships and beyond. And I noticed that I often will downplay myself, or I will deflect compliments more easily than not. And also, I will often, how do I say this? I'll just say it clearly. Sometimes I will make my life sound harder than it is or worse than it is because for whatever reason I feel vulnerable or afraid to share that things are good or share when things are good. Earlier this year, I had a conversation with my sweetheart and a friend, and we talked about what we would do more of or how we would show up more frequently if we felt safe, if we didn't feel like there was going to be a negative consequence for these actions, which is just about the most Six of Cups question, right? These are some of the questions I've been asking you throughout this episode. My partner is a trans man, and he said he wouldn't perform safety. Like he wouldn't always like check in with everyone all the time and like make sure everyone else was okay because he has his own stuff around masculine people not being safe and understanding how he's viewed and how he's read as a man. My friend, who is a trans woman, said she wouldn't shrink down and try to evade literally being seen. She would feel more okay taking up energetic and physical space because she wouldn't be afraid of violence, of getting physically hurt. Both my sweetheart and my friends' reflections were around true physical safety, which is really real. And I know a lot of people listening can relate on some level. And I thought about it, and mine was that I would share more of my life, more of the beauty of my life, more of my successes. And I don't because I don't want to make other people feel bad. And I don't want to be seen in a particular way, which probably ultimately is also about safety on some level. And that got me thinking about ancestry and longer, deeper patterns. And it reminded me of a teaching that my friend Dory had made about the evil eye in the Jewish diaspora, which is where I'm from and where she's from. And that is that a long time ago, hundreds, thousands of years ago, a form of protection is to downplay or speak negatively about something that was precious to them. For example, folks might say, oh, this baby is so ugly. What are we going to do? Or, oh, my daughter, so foolish, not smart, as a way to keep people away from beloveds that might harm them. And I thought about that after that conversation as someone from the diaspora, someone who came from ancestors who had to hide, who had to run, who had to flee, who had to get rid of and leave behind their earthly belongings, who always had very little, that a way of protecting it is not only like don't call attention to all the good, don't share all the blessings very openly, but downplay it. Don't give it existence. Downplay yourself as a twisted form of protection. And that is a coping mechanism. It is a trauma response. Ignoring abundance, ignoring beauty, ignoring gratitude might be a way to keep yourself safe. To present yourself as somehow lacking might be a way to keep yourself from harm, because you don't want what you have taken from you. But what it also does is it shows up as ingratitude. And I don't want to be ungrateful. I want to be grateful for all I've been given by my ancestors, by the universe, by the grace of those around me, my community, everyone listening, the trees, the stars, everything. And one way to be in gratitude is to expand large enough to hold it all the gifts, all the grief, all the blessings, and to turn towards all the love I have and to foster those in my own life and in the lives of those I love. And that's ancestral healing. That's expanding my capacity to receive by expanding my ability to offer and give. And that is one profound and spiritual teaching alive in the Six of Cups. We didn't even talk about inner child healing. We didn't even talk about inner teenager healing. We haven't even talked about future self healing. That's totally Six of Cups as well. But I will end it here. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Hopefully, this illuminated this beautiful card for you. If you'd like to join me in a couple of weeks for Resourcing the Creative Self, you can enroll and be with myself and others. Lots of love, everyone. Until soon. Moon Beaming is brought to you by the Moon Studio. It is created and hosted by me, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. It is edited by Rose Blakelock with a lot of additional help from Hazel Frew. It is supported by our beautiful patrons, which you can join over at patreon.com, The Moon Studio. If you would like to further support the podcast, you can sign up for a sponsorship. You can rate and review it or share it with your friends or on your social media. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much.